corruption and bribery, cooking the books, encouraging tax evasion, exploiting employees, gross human rights violations in emerging and developing countries, violating consumer and personality rights, or unscrupulous handling of natural resources are only a few examples which notably describe the dark side of our economic activity. By the topics of business ethics, or corporate social responsibility, CSR for short, we want to raise the question, how can CSR be realized in practice? A first, seemingly obvious approach consists in preventing bad practices, such as corruption or fraud. Concrete measures then are often labeled risk management, which is aimed at avoiding financial risks, but also the risk of reputational damage. No one likes bad press, right? As a result, one installs a clear code of conduct in the company, or so-called compliance or value management systems. For example, you can accept a bottle of wine from a supplier, but you have to pass up a golfing trip to Hawaii. However, risk and compliance management are only one aspect of corporate responsibility correctly understood, because CSR is not just about preventing bad practices. The more challenging question is, how can companies contribute to a good society through good business practices? Oh, that's easy, they say. We'll create a charity foundation or donate a lot of money and thus do good. Wrong. That won't hurt and may even help, but it's not systemic change. The important thing is, CSR is about the way in which companies make profits, not about how they spend them. This implies a more integrative perspective, founded on the basis of values and closely related to the company's core business. Good business for a good society sounds fair enough, but how can that work in practice? The following 4 steps can provide us with some insight. First, companies should develop a company mission statement. What is the societal purpose of their business activity? What contribution to society does the company want to accomplish through its business? Which bad practices are not acceptable for the company under any circumstances? This mission statement should first untie itself from a narrow product orientation and rather orient itself towards societal needs. It's not about cars, but about mobility. An insurance company does not sell insurance policies, but helps people managing risks. Such a mission statement should constitute a binding and codified foundation of values for the company. On this basis, and on this basis alone, business activity is performed. Second, it is about identifying social and ecological issues in exchange with the stakeholders of the company, to pay attention, to listen, and to talk to each other. That is important because companies can then move closer towards society again. For systemizing these topics, companies often use the instrument of materiality analysis. Through this, the significance of social and ecological aspects is structured in a simple matrix, from the point of view of the stakeholders as well as from the company's point of view. Corporate social responsibility is not a blueprint, but is rather defined differently from sector to sector and from company to company. However, one does not have to reinvent the wheel entirely, because there are, this is the third point, already some points of orientation in place. For example, the UN Global Compact or the ISO 26000. The Global Compact, for example, contains 10 principles concerned with human rights, labor standards, environmental protection, and anti-corruption. The ISO 26000 distinguishes 7 ranges of topics, with no less than 37 concrete fields of action. Topics here touch human rights, labor practices, environmental protection, and fair business practices, as well as consumer concerns and the integration of companies into society. The 7th topic in the ISO 26000 concerns organizational leadership, which addresses the systematic and strategic dimension of responsibility in the organization. Fourth, the concrete implementation of corporate social responsibility then relates to all relevant areas of activity and all departments of a company: procurement, production, research and development, human resources, marketing, sales and distribution, advertisement, and so on. In the field of procurement, for instance, the working conditions of supply firms turn into a criterion for the choice of suppliers. In the area of sales and distribution, there are guidelines for fair consulting services and absolute no-go approaches for contract acquisitions, to name only 2 examples. What sounds relatively complicated at first glance represents an important facilitation on second thought. The implementation of CSR can draw on existing management systems. Through these 4 steps, first, a well-founded mission statement. Second, the identification of relevant topics and exchange with the stakeholders. Third, the orientation towards general standards. And fourth, the strategic implementation in all departments of the company. Corporate social responsibility is there where it belongs. It is implemented in an integrative way and related to the core business of the company.